Cool. So we're live on one.
All right.
I'm going to start us. I'll wait and hopefully it'll get us live on the other.
Sounds good. I specifically grabbed my mortician cup today.
Perfect. I love it. I'll read the comments on the side and stuff to us. So we'll answer those kind of as we can. Well, hey, everybody, and welcome. We're diving right in. I am Kari the Mortician, and we are back with another interview. And today we've got Cristina, and she's up in Minnesota. And my mom's from Minnesota, so I get to say Minnesota. Oh my God. And it's everyone's like, why do you say words weird? And I'm like, what words growing up? So it's, I never knew it was a thing, but welcome.
Thank you. You know, I do have a Minnesotan accent, even though I'm born Italian in Italy, but you know, after being here for 30 years, you just kind of do the no's and the oops and whatnot.
So you were born in Italy?
I was, but grew up here in the States. So,
oh my gosh,
my accent is full swing Minnesotan, not Italian.
When did you come? How old were you when you came here? Then?
I was about 6 years old. So again, grew up here, but you know, try to go back when we can. But it's been great. I love it here.
That's amazing. I did not see it within the first 1 minute and 20 seconds. I'm like learning so much already.
There we go.
And Cristina and I have been the Facebook introduced people, never like in real time interacting. So today's I'm so excited about today. I'm so special. It's so special. I'm not so special. It is so special.
You are. Come on.
Well, and we're going to mention right off the bat, you guys all got to know Michael Sharkey a few weeks ago, and we talked about disinterments and moratory law. And this is his lady love who, as he said, went after him in the cemetery, made him take you on a date, like, you know, hunted him down.
Yeah, I think I need to tell my side of the story. I mean, you know, he is an attorney. You can't trust them all 100%. So half factual, but yes, our first meeting was actually my graduation of the Mort Sci program, the very first face-to-face meeting we had, which was a little awkward with my whole family taking a photo of him and I and never meeting him.
But, oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
But our first date was at exhumation, and rest is history, I guess. So.
Well, and what I love is, like I told Sharky, we both have cemetery loves. That my man's a cemetery. You know, I saw him in a cemetery and was like, oh my gosh. And then 20 years later, we went on a date. But, and our anniversary, like you guys, I think your first date was about a week or so after our first date. So we're on the 3 year and a half year track right now, which is crazy. I kind of love that. So I love
double date soon.
I know, right? I looked at but yeah, we need to come to Minnesota. It's long overdue.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us a little about your foray into the business. Was it your first career, kind of later in life career? Kind of what is your path to get here?
Good question. So second career for me. So I went to the University of Minnesota's medical school program, graduated in 2021. My previous career, I had a psychology background. So I was doing case management for the different counties here, specifically Hennepin County, contracted with them, and then Anoka County as well. And then long career in group homes, so overseeing group homes, downsizing group homes. So a lot of my clients came from the state hospital systems and then entering them into the community. So a lot of psych background, a lot of team meetings, dealt with grief in a lot of different ways, not necessarily in death, but was always interested in the funeral service. I'm a first generation funeral director in my family. So just never really pursued it because it was something we didn't really talk about. It was kind of, you know, seen as strange. So I just kind of kept it in my back pocket all these years. And I hit a point in my career that I just felt like I went as far as I could and decided, you know what, I want to pursue this kind of dream that I've always had. And that's where I went back to school and finished the program in a year and became licensed pretty quickly. So it's been now a few years that I've been licensed. So fairly new, but I love it. And I'm glad I went back to school to pursue this finally.
Well, and you have a daughter, and how old is she?
So she will be 6.5 next month.
So she was around when you were going to dive in and go to school and all of it.
Yeah, she sure was. So she was about 3. And and I'm not even sure if you know this, Kari, but, about 2 weeks into school, actually, I was married at the time, and we separated, and her dad had moved out, and we filed for divorce. So, and, that was hard, obviously, but it was not only, giving everything up, but really giving everything up to pursue this dream I had
Yeah.
while raising a 3-year-old at the time, during the height of COVID, to just complicate things even more. So yes, yep, I had a 3-year-old as a single mom in school during COVID, and not really sure what was going to happen.
Which is hard. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
imagine like 3-year-olds.
Yep.
3 years is it's a great age, but they're busy. They're constant.
Yeah.
Always need engagement. Always need you.
Yep.
The
Potty
clung
training. I mean,
to mom, like, and I think that's part of the mom part of it. Like single dad, yeah, that's hard too.
absolutely.
But the cling on to mom,
Yes.
it's different than with dad. I hate to say, but it just is in most
It is.
scenarios that I've seen.
Yep.
And so that's hard.
It is. It is. I agree with you. So it was hard to kind of have a life that I had built with someone to really kind of just change everything while changing again my home life, my relationship, schooling. I mean, everything was changed. But it taught me a lot, and we'll obviously get there. But yes, she was
Yeah.
3.5 when I first started school. About 3. Yeah.
Does she have a concept now about what you do now that she's a little bit older?
So so I drive her to school every day, pick her up, and anytime we pass a cemetery, she'll say, "Mommy, that's where you work." And I'm like, "Okay, I've never been in that cemetery, but yep." So in her mind, I think she thinks I work in a cemetery, and I drive skeletons in my fancy car. And I'm like, "Well, I mean, kind of." So she has been to the funeral home where I have worked previously, but I think she doesn't really quite understand. And we're very death positive in our household, so we talk about it. So we'll go to cemeteries, and we're very real about this person died. They are buried here, their body is here, but we that's about all we know. So I think now she's at the age where she's starting to ask questions about, well, where do they go, and how do you get them there? And it's hard to navigate sometimes.
I have found the hardest questions my girls have asked me, because my girls are 9 and 11 now.
Okay.
So, they're older and can comprehend, and they've been around the funeral home for quite some time. But how is that person in that urn and explaining cremation in a way that sounds not scary to a
Right.
kid? And I'm like, holy crap, like if I can't do that, how does anybody
Right.
do that? Like, how does anybody that doesn't work in death care do that? So I've like really tried to work. How would you explain that to?
Yeah. That's a great question, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I have a previous dog, love of my life, that dog, and she was cremated, and I have her ashes here, and I've showed them to my daughter, to kind of explain, and same thing. She's like, how Layla's in there? What do you mean? And so I've try to explain it simply without being so morbid, but I mean, I'm like, yeah, but think of it kind of like a fireplace, and sometimes people pick that, and then this is what's left over, and we have this because we want her here with us. But it is difficult, obviously. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I try to follow up, do follow up questions with her. That might be one on cremation. I should see kind of what she's retained, but yeah.
Tell me what a cremation is, honey, and see what she says.
Yeah,
Like, is a response.
Here's a cremation authorization while you're at it too.
Yes. Check that over. Let me know what you think. Yeah, I think my youngest was about 6 when we went to the funeral home, and she went up to a lady and she poked her in the eye, and I was like, "Don't do that." And she was like, "Well, I just wanted to see what would happen." Like, she just wanted to kind of test the water, I think, because they've gone in and they like to count who's there. Count the bodies, count the names on the cooler, count the boxes that are ready to go, see who's getting their hair done in the care center area. And, they don't go in the preparation room, but the care center and everywhere else, it's a high volume funeral home. So there's always, and one day there was 28, and they were just like, what is happening? And I was like, you tell me what's happening, because it's busy right now. But
do you think they want to do a career in this?
I don't think so. I remember during COVID, when my daughter used my iPad and was on FaceTime, and it came up as Kari the Mortician, and she was like, made a realization, like that's not cool. That's not cool to like have that come up on the screen. I don't think her friends probably had a darn clue what it was. But she had a realization that maybe I should care what other people know about what you do. But like I brought the hearse to her trunk or treat softball event last weekend, and she thought that was awesome. So it's the give or take of it all.
I get that. My daughter's about the same way, so I completely understand that.
It's like, this is cool, but then I'm over it. But you shouldn't talk about that, Mom. Thanks.
I think my daughter just thinks I drive, like I said, a fancy car, and I wear black every day, and I work with skeletons, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I've asked her, I said, do you want to do what mommy does for work? And she's like, no, I want to be an astronaut or an explorer. I'm like, you know what? I would have picked that as well. But you know what? Not in my lifetime. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Kelly Romanowski, you know Kelly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, her stepdaughter at the age of 6 told people I sent dead people to heaven.
Well, I mean, yeah, final disposition.
Well, that's Josh's son, who's 16. We were driving home from school. I picked him up he was driving me home. So it's kind of a new change. We drove by the cemetery, and I was like, your dad and I have put a lot of people in their graves there. And he goes, will you say that one time when we're out in public and nobody has context and you like just throw it out that you and dad put people in their graves?
Yeah, like the Sopranos here.
And I was like, yeah, it does sound like I used to take bodies to dad so he could burn them. Like it does kind of sound awesomely weird in a way. But he's like, that's pretty crazy, guys, if you think about it. But well, Mary Jones wants to know, do you have family nearby that has helped with your daughter when you have to work at night? So talk about getting into the business, and you got this daughter and being on call and schedule and everything.
Fabulous question. I think that's the biggest thing. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Before, when I first was interested in this, in my previous career, I did take a job as kind of reception work, funeral attendant at a funeral home here in the Twin Cities, just to see if I would like it. So I did speak to a lot of funeral directors. Obviously, it's high call volume firm. So I knew the reality that, I would be going out at night. I was under the impression that I'd be doing removals and embalming in the middle of the night and whatnot. And in my head, I'm like, well, okay, I could maybe do that. Fast forward, at that time, I didn't have a daughter. Fast forward, I had a daughter and in school, and that was the number one fear I had. I thought, I'm giving everything up to pursue a dream that might not be a reality for me because at the time, I didn't have someone. I can't wake up in the middle of the night to go do a removal. I have a 3-year-old at home. I don't have anyone to watch her. So I knew that was going to be real. Luckily, I live in an area in Minneapolis here where there is a lot of job opportunities. So even though my window of opportunities narrowed significantly because I knew I couldn't do certain things, I still thankfully had a lot of different opportunities. So I do have family here. I have a great partner. I have great friends and a really good support system that has helped me. I don't think I could have done it without them. So I think that is a reality for people that are maybe single parents looking to get into the field. I think you need to think about, are there viable opportunities where I could make it work with my schedule? If not, am I willing to relocate? Again, here in Minnesota, we have countless opportunities where maybe other states don't have that. So again, I've had a good support system that I don't think I could have done it without them, but there are positions out there. Might not be exactly what you want or maybe looking for, but a good stepping stone to get into the field. Being a single parent, you can find schedules that can work with that. I certainly did here.
Well, and I think that's one thing, and I say it all the time, is every funeral home is not the same. And so we often see where somebody comes out of school, they go to work at a funeral home, they're like, this business is terrible. I'm so burned out. And they use the words burned out, but they're not really burned out on the business. They're burned out on who they're working for.
100%.
And it's not just the funeral, the day-to-day, it's the management, it's the owner, it's the schedule they've taken on that looked good on paper, but once you're doing it is terrible.
Yep.
And they're not willing to move. They're not willing to go to opportunity, or they're not able, because you're like prime example of the female going to mortuary school, second career,
yes, ma'am.
has the kid, has the family, and not always able to uproot and move to something else.
Absolutely.
And so the your career just ends because you can't find the opportunity in your little circle of where you are able to go or willing to go, and then you're done.
Right.
Which is sad because I think we lose a lot of good people because of that part of it. But
I agree. And, it might not, understand people relocating, there's cost associations, or you might not have support. So I understand that that's not maybe an option for everyone, but I will say I didn't think certain opportunities were maybe at the table at the time. And over time there was. So I would always say be patient. There might not be something right in this moment, but there are opportunities out there. So it might not work for you now, but maybe, save up and you are able to relocate or be able to obtain a license in a different state to be able to have that company pay for a relocation package. I mean, there are different kind of ways to go about it. So I always say be patient because the opportunity can arise fairly easily.
well, and everybody's not just posting their job openings on Indeed. So going and getting positions at a cemetery or a crematory or a removal company or the medical examiner's office get you introduced to funeral directors and funeral home personnel in your area. And then you hear about job openings
Absolutely.
when they're not even posted because you're connected within the inner working circle.
Yep.
And that's a great way to find a position that works for you too.
Great point. Absolutely. Yep.
Now, is Minnesota dual licensed? We are here in Michigan.
Yep. So I'm licensed to do arrangements and prep work embalming. So right now I am at a traditional funeral home, so I do that. But I have worked for corporate settings where I've done arrangements only and other family-owned funeral homes as well. So I've kind of gone through it all here. Yep.
When we're going to have that discussion, that everybody says, oh, family owned versus corporate, which I say that's not a thing. It's really independent versus corporate is how you have to look at it. What have been your pros, cons on both sides?
Yeah, good question. So I, I'm at a firm I've been at just very recently, so not long term, but before that I was with a corporate firm. I had nothing but a wonderful experience. I was treated very well. I was compensated very well, and my schedule was pretty great. And I left for other reasons because I was doing arrangements only, and I wanted to be a well-rounded funeral director and be at the graveside and embalm my own body. So that's the reason I left. But I've worked for family-owned funeral homes where I had really good support systems and good experiences, and I've worked for other family-owned funeral homes where it hasn't been very organized, and I maybe wasn't able to have opportunities that I thought I'd had. So I think I agree with you. It's not family-owned as opposed to corporate. It really matters the people in positions of leadership, opportunities, obviously pay and schedule is great too, and you need to factor that in. But just because where I was in a corporate setting in a different state, it could look totally different. So I always say, each experience is its own, but do not fear the people that are like, you work for corporate, it's going to be terrible. They're going to pay you nothing and they're going to treat you terribly. That's not true. It might have been true for that person, and that's unfortunate that they experienced that, but it's not true for everybody. So kind of keep that in mind. Take everything with a grain of salt because it's not always how it seems.
Well, it does. It's a lot of it is who's boots on the ground there, who's manager in charge at your site, who are you working with? Because family owned, you may be bottom rung always and no opportunity to move up because it's family there. Or same with independent, it might be the same management that's going to always be there. You can't really move up anywhere. But corporate, yeah, they may change things up, or it's a crappy person, or it's a great person, or it's
Yeah. I think there's pros and cons. Another thing I think about too, just reflecting at my previous, employers, corporate. I mean, I came from a place where we always say there's paperwork to do more paperwork. If you're not good with your paperwork or don't like doing that, probably not for you. But that paperwork held me accountable. It prevented me from making mistakes that maybe a family-owned funeral home doesn't have policies. You're not protected. Maybe you could make some really serious mistakes and no one really has your back. So there's a lot of different factors I think involved with family owned as opposed to corporate or even mid-level too. So a lot of things to factor in there.
Now, Mary's asking, do you like prep or arrangements more?
I'm an arranger all the way. I have a psych degree, like I mentioned, I think I mentioned. So for me, I love meeting with families. I've had a very difficult clientele basis in the past. A lot of my individuals came from the state hospitals, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of mental disabilities, disorders. So for me, I like the arrangement. I like the psychology behind it. With that being said, being in the prep room is good. I learn a lot from it. That is not my strong suit at all, but I can 100% appreciate it and respect it. But for me, I like being in the arrangement room with my family. So
I have a psych degree as well. And
Oh,
so, yeah, that was my first bachelor's was psychology.
all
And
right.
so I feel like the whole funeral business is a huge social experiment that we're just like watching play out. And that's why I just love it, is because every day the interaction between people is so different, and the personalities and everything. And it's like
Yeah.
you can sit back and just watch how it flows and works. And I love that part of it. I think it's just so fun.
Yep, I'm right there with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. Question. Do you deal much, and this has nothing to do with being a single mom, but do you deal much with repatriations where you are? I'm doing one right now, so I'll talk about that in a second, but do you deal much with them there?
No, I haven't yet. Again, I've been at this firm very recently, so far, no. And
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So you could go right ahead, Kari.
No, you're good. Yeah, repatriations. We have a large university near where we're in the town that we're at, and students die, and there are a lot of international students. So that is a chunk of what we do repatriation wise. Otherwise, we do, a little bit here, a little bit there. I think more we bring people back here from like snowbirds, like Florida and Arizona and things, because Michigan is a huge snowbird. Probably, do you have snowbirds there the same?
Oh yeah, yep. Ours, like my parents go to Southern California to see family.
Okay.
So we, my previous employer, it was a lot of Arizona and Florida. A lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and repatriation is a lot of hoop jumping, and it's not hoops on the American side. Like, we have to meet requirements to get into the country we're taking the person to. We need a certificate from the health department often that says, yep, they're not contagious. They may enter your country. Death certificate, embalming report, statement from the embalmer if they're embalmed. They may need to be in a hermetically sealed container. We often call them Ziegler cases. They maybe have to be in a lead-lined box. So there's all these requirements of what we need and all this paperwork. We have to get a consulate often to sign off. So it's a huge hoop jump of paperwork to get in place before we can send them. And unfortunately, if we're taking someone back to like the Middle East for burial, or back to India for a burning on a funeral pyre, it takes about a week and a half at least, at minimum. So we can't really meet religious expectations, but we can do our best to get them there and carry through with it. But it takes a lot of work to do those. So yeah. There was another question. How long is the schooling? Why don't you talk about schooling?
Sure. So for us here in Minnesota, I think that you can transfer credits here, but here it's a Bachelor of Science degree in mortuary science. So I believe, if I remember correctly, it's a 2-year program. Having that psychology degree, for me, I was able to complete my program in 1 year's time. So I did strictly funeral related classes, since I had all my prereqs, all my psych, my statistics, everything, my sciences. So I was strictly in, embalming chemistry, embalming, restorative arts, psych classes, my law classes,
Yeah.
mortuary law. Yeah, it would have been nice to know someone at that time, but that came later in life. So for me, I did it in a year, did that. And then here we have, I did 2 rounds of clinical rotation. So I was with one funeral home for, I think, about 3 weeks, and then another funeral home for about 4 weeks. Did our national boards and then our state exam as well. And then, just kind of clocking in hours until you're licensed. So here we have an internship program. So that's where you're clocking in hours, need to do a certain required amount of embalmings, funeral arrangements, and funeral services. So it was a very intense year, but it was also nice to just really focus on the funeral service and mortuary as a whole. I felt like it was really fast paced. I went to school during COVID, so everything was remote except our lab. So it was hard.
Oh.
We were in, Zoom meetings from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. some days. So it was
Oh my
that
goodness.
long. So for me, going back to school, I was okay with that being older adults, but I did feel bad for my classmates where this was their first degree because they missed that campus life, the parties and the fun and the socializing, and I felt for them. So I know it was really tough, and it was hard. It was hard studying, for our exams and retaining information because you're, just not face to face. It's a little different. So it
Yeah.
presented a lot of challenges.
Do you feel as a mom that it was helpful that you could do that all from home?
For
Or
me, yes, 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 100% for me. And my little one was in daycare at the time and close by, just a few minutes from where I live. So for me, it worked well. I believe I had one evening class, if I remember correctly, and I would try to get a sitter for her at that time. And at that time, we kind of had split custody, so she was with her dad part of it too. So for me personally, I didn't mind, and it actually worked with my schedule. But again, I just felt bad for my classmates who weren't in my situation because they missed a lot, I think. So.
well, I always talk about going to mortuary school, that I'm such an advocate for going and being there, because for me it was like the first time I was with my people. Like, I enjoyed going to my first college, but I felt so at home. It's like you take this layer of introduction to people and trying to explain yourself, and you wipe it all away and you get to just jump right in with them, because you all are coming from the same kooky mindset of wanting to be funeral directors, and you don't have to explain it. You don't have to tell your story, and it's just such a comfort level there with the people.
Totally understand and agree 100%. I'm fortunate that even though it was COVID and things were remote, I still, my classmates, I call them friends and colleagues. I messaged one yesterday, another one the other day. So we still have those connections despite of things being remote. So we are fortunate to still build those relationships and those colleagues and connections now that we are licensed. So.
Someone asked what's the best mortuary school in the US? I'd say,
Oh no.
Warsham is what they said.
Yeah.
I have a
Good
hard
one.
time saying what the best school is because I've not attended all the schools to know. Like,
Good point.
yeah, I mean, of course, you're probably going to say Minnesota, of course, is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't want to go there because I have a lot of colleagues that I attended school all over the country. People that I highly respect, very educated, very just brilliant people. My experience again was a little different, being a second degree COVID, so it was a little skewed. I had a great experience, but I know a lot of people from DMAC that great experiences as well. So for me, I think it really depends on the experience that you had at your school. I had wonderful professors and people that I respect highly still here, and I know some schools maybe don't have that, and that's again unfortunate. Yeah. But I think a lot of positive things about a lot of schools out there. So I don't want on that.
And I think school provides you with the base.
Yeah.
And it's your training beyond school that really makes you who you are. We're learning just the nuts and bolts, but we build everything else when we're outside of school and we're working, hands-on and with families and in the preparation room. And I think the biggest is always knowing that you need to keep learning and you need to keep growing no matter how long you've been in it. And that is what the building and makes people better funeral directors and embalmers, not specifically where you went to school.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And I think as any business, as just life in general, things are evolving. This business is evolving. Things are changing. There's kind of a new way of funeral directors. We all know, maybe not all, but a lot of females coming into the business, a lot of younger, a lot of first generation. So things are changing just naturally. So I think education is key, not only, to keep evolving within yourself, but to contribute to the industry, to keep wanting better for all of us. We are in this together. It's hard when I see people online just bring other people down, and it's not about that. We need to be a team. This is a strong, close-knit community and field, and we have a lot of really brilliant minds here. So we just need to work together and keep growing this business and pushing it forward.
What dispositions are legal in Minnesota right now?
Good question. So we high cremation rate, of course, burial. With the cremation, we do alkaline hydrolysis as well, or maybe what people know as flameless, water-based cremation. Um, what else? I'm like, what else do we have? The
Is composting there yet?
Not yet. So it did pass. It's not in effect quite yet. So yes, that's the next one. So that will be interesting, but that I think goes back to, again, things are evolving, and it might not be for some, and that's okay. But that's reality, and that's coming. So I think people just need to be mindful and think, what can we give families? What are their options? And take maybe our own personal ideas on something and push them aside, because death and final disposition is very personal. So we need to do the best to honor that for what that person would want, or those families what they want.
I'm going to read a couple questions. Douglas asks, when you're serving an outside funeral home, do they also have their own in-house director embalmers, or do they always call someone in?
Oh,
Do you
so
understand what that means?
like a third party type?
I'm not sure. Douglas, can you
Yeah.
expand on that? I'm not sure if you mean like a trade type call. And then he also asked, how many mortuary students have initial issues dealing with the physical requirements involved with learning to embalm?
Okay, good. Okay. I'm not sure if I understand the first question completely, but the physical requirements in terms of embalming, how many do they meet?
Yeah, I think he's saying like how many students really start school and then maybe have some physical issues that when you're learning embalming, and I'm thinking like handicapped, or that's
Sure.
how I'm reading it.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if I want to, touch too much into that, because I personally have not had an experience with that. So I don't want to misguide someone that maybe has a better
yeah,
experience with that. But I think, embalmings do take time. So, you're on your feet. You are, smelling chemicals that can be irritant to your eyes, to your breathing. So I think, take that into consideration. Have a good ventilation system in your prep room. Legally, you're required to. But I know I've worked in some that, we turn it on and it doesn't really seem like it's even on. You can't even hear it. Where other places it's just cranked and your eyes barely itch. So for me, I think it's more, taking breaks if you need to. There's people use respirators for things, but I really can't touch base. I haven't had that experience. So again, I don't want to discredit someone who maybe has. I don't know, Kari, if you've maybe worked with people that maybe has been an issue.
yeah, I have worked with a FSA. We call them FSAs, a funeral service assistant.
Oh, sure.
With a part-timer that was in a wheelchair.
Oh,
And I went to him pretty quickly and I said, let's go around the whole building
Yep.
as all the things we would do, and let's find what we need to tweak for you. And the biggest thing was carrying flowers, fully able to carry them. But
Sure.
when you place them on his lap, the movement would slosh the water and his whole lap would be covered in water. So we realized pretty quickly which flowers he could carry easily and which ones we maybe needed to move. But he had no hesitation to try and get in. Obviously, he couldn't lift a casket because of where he was in terms of position. So there was a few things we found that were just not possible, or we couldn't figure a way to. And I've had a gentleman who's in a wheelchair. He worked at a funeral home in Georgia, and him and I have talked for years now. And he's like, I would love to go to mortuary school, but I don't think physically I can accomplish all these things. So we've talked through different embalming in a wheelchair. You could do a ramp on the side of the table to try and get higher, but you can only outreach so far.
Sure.
My biggest concern was cleanliness. How are you going to cover your chair to not bring contaminants and things home? And if you did like a cape over it, would you roll over the cape? Would you? And so we have talked numerous times through. His health got really bad, so he never went to school. But just different things to think about that I would have never thought about. And he'd go, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And what about those wheelchairs that stand you up, except they're like 30,000 crazy or something dollars. And so people who have a hard time standing for a long time have maybe fibromyalgia, maybe I think there's a lot of different considerations, but I think there are workarounds to some of it. Like you said, taking breaks, if you have any respiration issues, that may be a challenge to wear anything covering your face,
Sure.
being in a preparation room where you have strong chemicals. So I think that you have to almost get in there to try it. But I think even on the psychological side, some people get in and realize it's not for them because of the emotion and the mental. And I don't know if you hear this often where people are like, I'm going to go to mortuary school because I lost my so-and-so. And so I know what people are feeling and I want to help them. This isn't grief therapy for you going in because you have to put all of your own loss aside essentially to care for somebody else. And so pretty quickly you realize like it may not be the correct place for you, but what have you encountered? Like, what did you hear going to school from people about why they were there?
Yeah. So I, went to school with a lot of, third, fourth generation funeral directors. So, great grandpa started their funeral home. They didn't have a choice. Some just said I grew up at the funeral home, so it felt natural. Others, I did, go to school with a couple of people like you mentioned as well. And unfortunately, some people are still in the business, but a lot aren't. And I think maybe people come in with certain expectations or ideas of what it might be. I think a lot of people maybe romanticize being a mortician with what they see in the media and in movies, and that's maybe not reality. But people do it for different reasons. Again, for me, having that psych background, I wanted to still be able to help people, but do it in a way, in a different way, a different setting. So for me, it was a pretty easy transition. But I know people that were interested in a lot of people, biology degrees. They like the science of it. They want to be in that prep room. They like anatomy. They like biology and chemistry. So they're more medically, more scientifically, their brain is wired that way. So they want to do that and be able to experience things differently. And some people I know started off as funeral directors, now work at the medical examiner's office. So like you mentioned before, there are different avenues within this where you can kind of play around to see where you might fit best.
I've got a question from someone on Instagram, jfelipe02, getting ready to graduate mortuary school. What tips do you have as I prepare for my apprenticeship? I've been with the funeral home as part-time for 3 years, but apprenticeship specific tips. What you got, Cristina?
Yeah, great question. Be humble. Be humble, but be confident. So for me, I'm one person that just kind of doesn't mind just getting in there. But I've seen a lot of people go in saying, did really well in school. I know everything, and they get in the funeral home and they just get eaten alive. So really, try things and be confident, but be humble and still be reserved because there is a lot to learn. We are all learning. I know funeral directors that have been doing it 40 years and they are still learning things every day. So I think again, be confident, have courage to try things, but know that you will make a mistake. Hopefully not too big of one, but you will make a mistake. We talked about, Michael and I talked about the other day how, I've dropped a cot before, and I dropped that cot with the body on it in front of every other person in that prep room. And, and we always say you've either dropped a cot or you have, and you've told people, or you haven't, you've never told anybody. We're going to make mistakes no matter what, but as long as we bounce back and learn from that and try not to do it again, you'll be okay. So I think really just kind of listen and learn and try new things. And it's okay to be scared sometimes and maybe being unsure. But if you're going in it with a good heart and good direction, you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine.
Well, Susan's asking, what are we discussing? And I am Kari the Mortician. I'm talking to Cristina the Mortician up in Minnesota. And Christina's a single mom. And I said, hey, do you want to come on? You're a female funeral director. She's like, let's talk about being a single mom. Like, how hard is that going in to be a funeral director, which is a 24/7 business? And I said, oh my gosh, that perspective is awesome. So here we are discussing all things funeral, but talking about also being a single mom. Now, one question I get a lot as a mom is, oh, you're a mom. It must be really hard. Like, it must be the worst to take care of kids. Like, that has to be the hardest for you. Is that the hardest for you, is taking care of children, or do you find other types of services are harder, or kind of what are your feelings?
Yeah. Overall, generally, yes. Yes, because I think of my little one and I think about what it would be like to lose my little one, and I can't imagine what families are going through. But certain things have surprised me. I've had it where I've worked, on little old women, and for whatever reason, going to a funeral service, I'm like tearing up, and I don't know what it was about this person or their stories, but maybe it reminds me of my grandma. I'm not sure, but some things really kind of catch me off guard. And I think, I try to reflect on my drive home and think, why did that one get to me so much? So, yes, of course, it's maybe easier to accept death when it's been, people elderly that we can expect it. That's a natural progression that, we pass when we're older. So when a young child passes, it's traumatic. It's not expected. But it's surprising. I don't know, Carrie, if you've had that, but again, certain things kind of maybe catch me off guard. But yeah, of course, the children are always incredibly difficult. But that's where you can take that and do your best and really try to help that family. You're going to help every family as best as you.
Right.
There's something for me, at least being a mom, that I do, think maybe think it through a little more, or do a little more care, just because, it's you're a mom, you get it.
Yeah. Well, and I think I always think with kids, like trying to make it extra special, like you said, they're not the saddest for me, which I know is crazy.
Okay.
Like babies, not the saddest.
Sure.
More up into like early teens, late like 9 to 12. We're getting sad because they're more of their own people, and they're just on that cusp of like getting
Right.
into really who they are. And then teenagers are just getting out into the world and, falling short of that next big stage. That's really sad to me. But I always think like all the things that are never going to happen for those parents, especially, they're never going to have the wedding. They're never going to have all the birthdays, the graduation party, all these events. So this event is like every event that is never going to transpire or put into one. And so I try and remember that, especially when you get families that are a little extra because they've got all the you should do this and you should do that. And this would be special. And I try and remember, okay, this is it. This is the only big event really for them, for their child while they're here. So I try and remember that. I heard that a couple years
That's
ago,
a good
but
idea. Yeah.
I think some of the saddest moments have been sitting with like 95-year-old men, and they're having to plan the funeral for their wife of 70 plus years.
Yeah.
And they are just destroyed. Like I could cry, like destroyed. And they loved that little woman so much and had loved them and cared for them and been with them for 70. I can't even imagine
I know.
that. And that breaks my heart. I think I can think of more moments where I've been like in the car driving home, just, sobbing for that than I probably have for children. I think because I put my mind in a place where I don't let myself go there a lot of times with kids, but there are times, and I'll come home and I'll crawl up in bed with the kids and I'll hold my kids and I'll sob and they're like, what is wrong? And I'm like, just give me 10 minutes and I'll
Yeah.
be fine.
Yep.
But it's like you have to let it out because you do turn things off to do what we do, and then they're going to turn back on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm that way with embalming children.
Sure.
I'm good until I'm completely done and I tuck them in before I leave. And then I'm like, okay, it's like I got through that. I did that. Now I can lose my crap for a hot minute. And
We're human. We're human still at the end of the day. You need to be professional, but we're still human, and we do this because we care, right? So
yes. That's understandable. Just reading a couple. Douglas, we talked about the children and them talking about what we do at the beginning. So you may have to go back and watch that. Has the basics of embalming changed in the modern era? Like, have you seen, just since you've been around, much change within embalming in the couple years you've been in?
So I have not, and I've worked for, I mean, strictly in the Twin Cities here, really Minneapolis-based firms. So for me, the people teaching me, embalming, guiding me, educating me, it's been the same. Most of the people I think have been a graduate of the U of M program as well, fairly recent, last 10, 20 years. So for me, I've had consistency, which has been nice, but
Yeah.
so not really for me so much. I don't know if you can, touch base on that more, but not in
Well,
my little licensure time so far.
I think there's far more fluid options.
Sure,
I
sure.
I was thinking earlier, and I don't know why this story popped in my head earlier, but I was thinking about a situation. I remember when Champion, because I always use Champion, like when I was the first 10 years of embalming. That's we always had was mostly Champion. And High Form was my baby. I loved High Form, formaldehyde more base, and then Die Form came out, which is a glutaraldehyde base. And I just remember like when that happened, and it was like, whoa.
Whoa.
And so I think the evolution of fluids and trying to find more fluids that are focused to specific things, and with the evolution of how our bodies are changing and the medications that people are on more and the longer stays in hospital. And I would say that's probably the biggest thing that pops in my mind is all of the options that I don't feel like were there back in the day.
Sure. Yeah, good point. Mhm.
Is recertification required? What is your continuing ed like up there? We don't have any continuing ed in Michigan yet.
Really?
Yes, Michigan
Oh,
must
wow.
believe that we know everything all the time. I don't know.
Wow.
It's supposed to start next year,
Okay.
but it's bananas to me that we
Yeah.
have nothing. So
Here we do. We need to report during your reporting year, and you have to reach a certain amount of credits within certain designated topics. So yes, we do, and I am for it. Again, I believe in education, and even if you think you know everything, you'll keep learning something. So I'm big. I like to attend conventions and try to attend seminars and webinars, and just for my own, personal and professional growth. So I do like that we do have that in Minnesota, and there's a wide array of different things you can attend. So it's very easy to do it. So I'm all for it.
well, let's bring it back to the single mom discussion for just
Sure.
the last few minutes. What other advice? Like, what are some of the biggest things that you would say? Like, if you had to pick your top 3 things to tell single moms that are thinking about going to mortuary school to propel them to get, or to encourage them.
Yeah. That's a tough one. It's a little loaded question there, Kari. Every situation, I know, every situation's different. So I think what worked for me is I have a really, really strong support system. I mentioned that earlier today. I have family that when I decided to go back to school, they were supportive. I have a partner who's very supportive, and family as well, and friends. So people have stepped up to help me with my child, because I might need to study for my exams or need a break and spend time with my friends. So I think number one is having a good support system. I understand that some individuals don't have that, and I can't imagine that. But you're not alone, because I do know other single moms that have gone back to school in other professions, and there are a lot of Facebook groups, there are a lot of social groups, a lot of different ways to connect with people. So you are not alone in that. I think the second thing is to be realistic. Setting goals is good, so you have a metric, you know what your goal is, but be realistic. Like we mentioned, you might need to relocate for job opportunities, and maybe financially you can't right now, but maybe you can work towards it. Maybe you can, and there's just a big fear. Well, you got you got to just try then. So I think being realistic about what you can or can't do, and set boundaries for yourself. Like I mentioned, I'm not able at the time, when I first got licensed, I wasn't able to go do removals in the middle of the night because it was just me. So then I found positions where I didn't need to do that. We had a team of removal techs to do that. So yeah, it was maybe more office setting, and that's maybe not what I wanted to do long term, but it worked for me, and it opened the door for me to have other opportunities. piece. So I think, just keeping your options open. Yes, it's good to get input from others, but just because they went through something doesn't mean it's like that across the board. You always hear, be willing to work for no money and you're going to get treated terribly. And that is not the case. I can't stress that enough. Do your research, start connecting, start talking to people. There are endless opportunities out there. You just have to maybe be willing to take an opportunity that you thought maybe you wouldn't take, and be flexible and be brave. You got to be brave. Like I said, gave up everything I had for this. And I've done very well for myself. I've given up a lot of sacrifices to be where I am today, but I did it. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. I promise you. I promise you. You got to keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's all good advice. I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's just so super important. So what do you think is the best term to call your partner when you are our age dating? Do you like partner? Do you? I just had this big conversation with my daughter, her 11, her little friend spent the night here and talked about her 11-year-old boyfriend. And so I called Josh. I was like, hi, boyfriend. Like, what is that? So as you're saying partner, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to ask her this.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know if he's listening, so I'm a little nervous right now. A lot of people probably have a lot of different names for him, good and bad. No, it's okay. Yeah, my daughter too, she's like, are you on the phone with your boyfriend? And my daughter actually calls him by his full name. It's very formal, and she's done that. So it's kind of cute. But, I refer to him as my partner, and maybe that's confusing because I don't know, people are like your business partner. And it's like, no. But, at this day and age, he's not my husband quite yet. So I guess he gets the term boyfriend for now, or partner.
That's why I'm like, we need like an in-betweener.
Yeah.
Like a adult life. What
companion?
Is that?
Yeah. I know, it's awkward.
Partner seems to have like it's your gay partner. That's how it's always partner.
Right.
Which is not just that, but so it's, that was my discussion with a couple people this week. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to throw this at her right now.
No, I'm right there with you. So where I am, people generally know him. So for me, I just refer to him by his name and it works well for me. But that's a tough one in different situations. I'm not really sure how to navigate that.
Well, I love that, like my social media people like that watch me regularly, they know Josh now because he's been on. So I'm like, Josh, and I don't have to like describe him at all, which is beautiful. But I love it. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I'm so thankful for everybody joining. Make sure to watch my next. When is my next? Let me see. Next week is Todd.
Ooh.
Is it Hera or Hara? I'm
not sure either, but that will be excellent.
I'm excited. I've never talked to him. I messaged him and I said, how do we know like all these same people and we have never spoke? And so I'm interviewing him next week. He's an author, he's a funeral director, and I'm super excited. That's next Wednesday night. So that'll be super special too. So join us for that one. But thank you guys for everything.
Thank you.
Hold tight, Cristina.